You might be wondering how to memorize and apply all those provisions about government property, contracts, and when the state can be sued in the UPSC exam, especially under Articles 294 to 300. By the end of this video, you will be completely clear about who owns government property, how the state can be sued, and the important exceptions you must remember for both prelims and mains. We will keep this beginner-friendly, build the picture step by step, and towards the end, we will understand a key idea that most UPSC aspirants miss. First, think of the union and each state as legal people, juristic entities that can own property, enter contracts, and be parties in a suit. That is the constitutional starting point. The Constitution treats governments like legal persons, so public assets and obligations can continue smoothly after it commenced. Now imagine succession like a baton pass at a relay. Property and liabilities that belonged to the dominion, provinces, or princely states before the Constitution simply vested in the union or the corresponding state. This rule avoids gaps in ownership or responsibility the moment the Constitution began to operate. Next, a tricky term, bona vacantia, means ownerless property. And the rule is simple. Ownerless goods belong to the government where they are found, and if not in any state, they vest in the union. Related ideas like escheat and lapse work the same way. If there is no rightful owner, the property accrues to the government. Sea wealth is another clear constitutional rule. Minerals and resources under territorial waters, the continental shelf, and the EEZ belong to the union. So coastal states cannot claim proprietary rights over those zones. That centralization helps national management and international compliance for offshore resources and maritime zones. Now about taking private land. Both parliament and state legislatures can compulsorily acquire property. But the rules around compensation have changed over time. The 44th Amendment altered the contours of the right to property and the constitutional obligation to pay compensation, narrowing absolute guarantees but preserving protections in specific cases. For example, special protection remains when the government acquires property of a minority educational institution or land under personal cultivation within statutory ceiling limits. Separately, the executive power of the union or a state lets governments acquire, hold, and dispose of property and even run business. But such actions must conform to law and constitutional safeguards. Moving to litigation, Article 300 tells us the Government of India sues and is sued in the name of the Union of India and a state in its official name, recognizing them as distinct legal entities. When you frame a cause of action against a government, naming and authority matter. Suits must use the proper official name and follow any statutory procedures that regulate government liability. Contracts entered into by the government must be signed by persons authorized to act for the president or the governor, and failures in formalities can render such contracts unenforceable. The officer who signs usually avoids personal liability, but the government itself remains responsible for contractual breaches. What about torts and sovereign immunity? Another important exam area. Historically, the rule was that sovereign acts were immune, but this doctrine has been narrowed over time. Courts have steadily reduced the scope of immunity, emphasizing accountability, and held the state liable for wrongful acts causing loss or injury even when labeled as official. Key authorities such as the Nagendra Rao judgment criticized sweeping immunity and asserted that citizens must retain remedies against negligent state action. Later cases like Common Cause followed this trend, making it clear that absolute sovereign immunity is inconsistent with a modern welfare state. Remember this evolution for your answers. It shows judicial reasoning and constitutional balance, which is often tested in mains and interview questions. Now, suits against individual public officials differ. The president and governors enjoy strong protections for official acts and certain personal protections during tenure, including immunity from arrest, and special notice requirements for civil suits. Specifically, civil proceedings against a president or governor during office need prior 2-month notice, and criminal proceedings cannot be initiated while they are in office. Ministers, however, do not get the same blanket protection and can be held liable in ordinary courts for personal crimes or civil wrongs. Judicial officers enjoy immunity for acts done judicially to preserve independence, and errors by judges are remedied through appeals rather than tort suits. Civil servants are normally not personally liable for official contracts or acts. Liability lies with the government, although ultra-virus actions may attract personal responsibility. For exams, prioritize remembering Articles 294 to 300, the succession rule, bona vacantia, see wealth vesting in the Union, the 44th Amendment's impact on compensation, Article 300 naming, and the changing jurisprudence on sovereign immunity. In mains, answers cite the Nagendra Rao line on accountability and a modern state. And in prelims, expect statements testing who owns what and when the state may be sued. Quick recap. Governments are juristic persons. Succession vests all public assets in union or state. Ownerless property goes to the government. Sea wealth belongs to the union. Acquisition is allowed with legal limits, and Article 300 governs suits. You are now equipped to explain property vesting, contractual and tort liability of the state, and the special immunities enjoyed by certain officials in a clear, concise way for UPSC answers. Keep revising these principles with landmark cases and practice framing fact patterns to spot whether a function is sovereign or operational, and you will write precise answers under exam pressure. If you want structured notes, quizzes, and a guided plan to remember these rules for prelims and mains, continue your learning with EduRev, where detailed summaries and practice questions await. Good luck, stay curious, and remember, clarity on these basics gives you a powerful edge in constitutional law questions for UPSC.